Of course, NATO are meeting as we speak, so we just wanted to start with a little snapshot here of the the NATO members in blue, and just ask the question, what's probably top of the agenda in the discussions that they've been having over the last few hours?
So this is an emergency meeting to talk about Ukraine, and there are two important dimensions to this conversation. The most important in the longer term is how NATO now remobilises itself to deal with Russia under President Putin in a way that is the most significant change since the end of the Cold War in 1990. And the second thing they're going to do, just as important, is talk about NATO support to Ukraine in terms of more sanctions and military support.
On the topic of military support, if we just dive in a little bit closer, but still with the NATO neighbours clearly in shot, some announcements that have started to come out, some that are expected in terms of reinforcements?
Yes, so NATO is going to affirm today it's going to deploy 4 more battle groups. It has battle groups already deployed across NATO, one each to Slovakia, Hungary, Romania and Bulgaria, and they're a sign of NATO assurance and a signal that Article 5 remains inviolate.
And now let's dive in a little bit to get some perspectives of what's going on the ground in Ukraine. First of all, a focus dive on Kiev itself. And we have heard relatively encouraging stories of some successful counterattacks by Ukrainian forces in and around Kiev. Are those significant, General Sir Richard?
So they are significant, but they're very small scale. So we know of successful Ukrainian counterattacks, for example, in Irpin and Bucha, and also actually to the east of Kiev. And these are very small tactical actions, but they are indicative of the Russian forces are not breaking into Kiev, and indeed in many places are moving back a little and starting to build defensive positions. And that feels like another signal of this evolving stalemate.
Let's talk about that stalemate if we zoom out and look at all of Ukraine. We've been talking that these red-shaded areas, the land that Russia has seized, haven't changed drastically over the last week, the 4th week of this war. The stalemate, is that a very good thing for Ukraine, or does it give Russia time to refuel, both literally and metaphorically?
Well, both of those things are true, I think. I think the signs are right now that the Russian campaign in its current construction is not capable of taking much more ground, and we're beginning to see Russia dig in these defensive positions, which would indicate that it realises that. That does not mean that will be the outcome, because Russia is moving reinforcements from across Russia, both men and material, in order to unlock that stalemate. But we're seeing not much movement around Kiev. We're seeing the battle for Mariupol, which we imagine they will in the end break. We have not seen the significant movement towards Odessa that we were forecasting a week ago, but we couldn't rule it out. And we are concerned about Russian forces moving from the north and the south of the country once Mariupol is concluded, in order to try and circle the Ukrainian forces in the Donbass. But what this begins to feel like is a war confined to the east of Ukraine, except for continuing air and missile attacks in the west on the supply lines. But this is not the war Russia intended to have.
Pictures from a Ukrainian source appearing to show a strike on a Russian naval ship in the occupied port of Berdyansk. Plumes of smoke are seen billowing from the large vessel. If confirmed, this would be a setback to Russia's attempts to create a land bridge in the southeast of Ukraine. Seen here 3 days ago, the ship was capable of carrying up to 1,500 tons of military equipment. The attack took place 80 kilometres from the besieged port city of Mariupol. Once vibrant, these are the scars of a month of war. Russian bombardment leaving ruins and rubble throughout. Standing defiant, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelenski, last night, unusually in English, urged people worldwide to show their support for Ukraine.
This is only the beginning for Russia on the Ukrainian land. Show your standing. Come from your offices, your homes, your schools and universities. Come in the name of peace. Come with Ukrainian symbols to support Ukraine, to support freedom, to support life. Come to your squares, your streets. Make yourselves visible and heard. Say that people matter, freedom matters, peace matters, Ukraine matters.
A significant amount of strategic territory has been taken by Russia, but the capital Kiev remains in Ukrainian hands, with troops taking back some surrounding areas. Britain will provide 6,000 missiles and £25 million to support the Ukrainian army. But as the war continues into a second month, Ukraine's demands for a no-fly zone are yet to be met.
Now, Russian President Vladimir Putin announced Wednesday that future payments for his country's gas exports must be made in rubles. Many see an effort to undermine Western sanctions and prop up Russia's struggling currency.
As explained by Putin, the new rule would apply to countries sanctioning Russia but still receiving its gas exports, a list that includes the EU and Japan.
A number of Western countries have taken illegitimate decisions on the so-called freezing of Russian assets. This collective West has actually drawn a line under the reliability of its currencies. We've already spoken about this. It crossed out the trust in these currencies.
But existing contracts are in dollars and euros, making the move dubious at best.
The announcement to pay in rubles is first and foremost a breach of contracts, and we will now talk with our European partners about how we respond to this.
It's also unclear how payments would even take place. Western banks don't trade heavily in rubles. Russian banks could exchange the currencies, but that would undermine sanctions, giving Russia much-needed foreign currency, and in turn strengthening the weakened ruble.
I don't think it is practicable, and we already hear that not only Germany, but Italy and Austria have already declared that they will continue to deal with Gazprom according to the existing contracts, which means that the payment will be made in euro or dollar.
Which also means that Putin's demand further complicates the EU's long and painful divorce from Russian fossil fuels.